John, and I think that we're going to have a success. I think this will be a very big success. It's never been taken this far. There's never been a relationship like this, and we're starting from here. But I really think a lot of progress has been made, and we'll see what happens. We're talking about a few weeks. I guess many of you will be with us, but some great things can happen, and that's what we hope. So I want to thank you all. It's very early in the morning. I think you probably broke the all-time in history television rating for 3 o'clock in the morning, that I would say. But I want to just congratulate. These are 3 great people, and congratulations.
Have you gotten any sleep, or were you too excited?
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Could happen.
And U.S. President Donald Trump there wrapping up his remarks as the 3 U.S. detainees arrive at Andrews Air Force Base. Now, President Trump spoke late Wednesday night on the phone with South Korean President Moon Jaein before the Americans arrived, and he called their release a gesture of goodwill that'll have a positive effect on the upcoming North Korea-U.S. summit. Briefing the South Korean leader, Trump said the former detainees are in good health, as we could see just there, and thanked Mr. Moon for his help in getting them home.
I just spoke to President Moon and explained what was taking place with respect to the 3 gentlemen. And President Moon of South Korea was very, very happy to hear it. He likewise has been incredibly helpful.
Mr. Trump also told Mr. Moon that Mike Pompeo had productive talks with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. The South Korean leader said it was an excellent decision for human rights and humanitarian reasons, and credited the U.S. president's strong determination and leadership for making it happen. Seoul's presidential Blue House told reporters that President Trump said he would be announcing the time and place of his meeting with Kim Jong-un very shortly.
We picked a time.
In other news, it was a little over 4 years ago that the South Korean ferry Sewol-ho sank in waters off the southeastern coast, killing more than 300 people, mostly high school students. Now the ship, raised from the sea and on land, was finally turned upright today, so a more thorough search can be conducted and hopefully result in new findings in the investigation. Our Kim Mo-gun is at the scene where the operation began this morning. Mo-gun, how's the atmosphere there?
Yes, Devin, I'm here at the Mokpo New Port, and just around noon, the lifting operation of the Sewol-ho ferry finally came to an end, and now we're able to see the full shape of the ferry for the first time since it capsized in 2014. The Sewol-ho investigation committee started the process at 9 a.m., pulling 64 wires through the 10,000-ton floating crane that's connected to a total of 66 steel beams installed on both sides of the ferry. The vessel had been gradually pulled upright in 6 stages by tilting the body of the ferry by 35 degrees from the ground to 50 degrees and finally to 90 degrees. We've also seen some rusty particles and liquid falling from the vessel through the final stages of the operation. Now that the Sewol-ho has been lifted to an upright position, the committee says it will install a pathway that can allow access to the ship's interior so that they can start removing any hazardous elements that may still be inside the hull. After that, investigators will officially begin their search for the bodies of the 5 victims still unaccounted for all these years later. They will also look for new clues that could unlock fresh evidence about what caused the disaster. Family members are also hoping to find the belongings of their loved ones that could still be inside the vessel. But investigators say official search operations are unlikely to start for the next few weeks, as the process of safely securing the ferry, including removing the support beams, won't be finished until June 10th. Back to you, Devin.
All right, our Kim Mo-gun reporting there from Mokpo New Port. Thank you very much for that. I'm Devin Whiting, and those are your news headlines for this hour.
Now, over the last few days, there seemed to be a delay over the announcement of the North Korea-US summit details. Some had been concerned that plans had been stalled, But now with the North's release of the American detainees during the US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's visit to Pyongyang, the two sides seem to be back on track again. EG1 has more.
On top of having fine-tuned the details for the historic first meeting between the leaders of North Korea and the United States, the release of 3 American detainees made U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's visit to Pyongyang all the more satisfactory for Washington. And a North Korean expert says this was part of Kim Jong-un's efforts to show his sincerity towards the much-anticipated summit.
With the summit ahead, this shows Kim's willingness to maintain a reconciliatory mood and to hold the meeting. And we can say that could translate into his sincerity in denuclearizing.
Though the experts said the release of the detainees would not have been used as a card to negotiate the lifting of economic sanctions or levels of denuclearization, he said he does think the North could expect something in return.
There could be a link between the release of detainees and the possibility of the U.S. raising human rights issues in North Korea. The release could be a sign Kim is sending to Trump, asking him not to raise human rights problems too strongly during the summit.
Human rights is one of the most sensitive issues to North Korea. It has shown strong rhetoric and hostility whenever it has been rebuked on the matter. Just last week, North Korea's state newspaper Nodong Shinmun published a commentary criticizing the U.S. as the greatest offender of human rights issues. This comes as the U.S. publication Country Reports on Human Rights Practices for 2017 labeled North Korea and a number of countries, including China and Russia, as morally reprehensible. But despite such reactions from the North, the U.S. has continued to press the issue, with the U.S. State Department issuing a scathing condemnation of Pyongyang's human rights violations last week. While some experts point to the human rights issue as one of the reasons for the delay in finalizing and announcing the details of the summit, they say the latest development between North Korea and the U.S. could mean the two have reached an agreement on the matter. 이지원, Arirang News.
Now we're joined by Professor Kim Hyun-wook from the Korea National Diplomatic Academy to look at the implications of this momentous event a bit further. Professor, thank you for coming in today.
Okay, thank you.
Now, the US detainees are now back on American soil. This seems like a significant gesture by Pyongyang to show that they're serious about the upcoming US summit. Would you agree?
Yes, I think so far the Kim Jong-un's gestures and all the diplomatic behaviors seem like maybe he's different from his father and his grandfathers. But I'm not sure about the detainee released. I think this would be one of the excuses that he invites Pompeo to Pyongyang. And Pompeo went into Pyongyang and discussed about some of the details of what the summit would be between Trump and Kim Jong-un. So I think the detainee release thing only would not really mean such a gesture that would be positively showing to the United States that, okay, we are, Kim Jong-un is serious about the summit. But other things are beginning from the inter-Korean dialogue and until now, all the behaviors that Kim Jong-un has shown seems like he's a little bit different from his father.
Of course, this moment that we're seeing on the screens now is a very welcome moment for the detainees themselves and for their families and friends. But perhaps we should still remember that they were detained by North Korea. And as if you heard an interview just afterwards, one of the detainees revealed that he went through some hardships. He had some labor. Although he did say that they treated him when he got ill, they were still held against their will in some way. So should we still consider this occasion as particularly meaningful? Or is it another example of North Korea just using US detainees again as bargaining chips like we've seen before?
Well, I think definitely is one of the important bargaining chips that he has been using to deal with the United States historically. But the fact itself that detainees had hardship inside North Korea, I think would make President Trump to raise the issue of human rights to deal with all these kinds of situations. I'm not sure if it will be really effectively working vis-a-vis Kim Jong-un. But I think at least domestically, President Trump needs to raise this issue. Congressmen, a lot of people are talking about this. There's still a lot of demonstrations in D.C. Against the human rights issues in North Korea. So I think this should be one of the important agenda in the summit.
Of course, as we can see, the detainees here, they came off the plane unaided. But in previous examples, in the last example, when an American detainee was released, he came back in a comatose state and he died a few days after. The sad case of the American student Otto Warmbier. So I guess we shouldn't forget these human rights issues that they're having. But let's go back to Mike Pompeo's visit to Pyongyang. I mean, he's talked about this denuclearization roadmap, which he said Pyongyang are open to discuss. Now, North Korea confirmed that a summit is now on the way as well, but how close do you think the two are to an agreement?
I think at least they have agreed upon the CVID, complete, verifiable, and irreversible dismantlement of North Korean nuclear program. But one of the key issues that they had conflict with each other is that the U.S. wanted to deal with the denuclearization process very quickly, one time, one-shot game. But Kim Jong-un wanted it to be stage by stage, and by stage he wants to get some incentives from the state, something like that. But I think after Kim Jong-un's visit to Dalian to meet Xi Jinping, I think North Korean position, has been a little bit changed and became more flexible. So I think after visiting Pyongyang, the positions of two countries might have been converged on the U.S. ideas and attitudes. And of course, in other terms like agenda setting and, regime guarantee things, I think North Korea would have got what it wanted.
You talked there about complete CVID, which is complete, verifiable, irreversible denuclearization. But the White House has also been pushing PVID, which is permanent, verifiable denuclearization. What do you think of this change in wording from the US? And is it just Washington trying to test Pyongyang to see how far they can push them?
I think it's just one of the U.S. strategies to push North Korea so that, kind of showing to North Korea's messages that the U.S. is very firm and hardline, that kind of things. But the meaning itself is not really special. I mean, CVID itself, verifiable and reversible means that it would be permanently dismantling the nuclear program of North Korea. So just changing C to P doesn't mean really much. I mean, the meaning itself is not different. So I think, it just moves of the United States to be on the upper side of the deals before the summit begins.
So US pushing to see. So when Trump got off the plane just now, we saw with the US detainees, he once again teased us about the time and location of the summit. He didn't say where it was going to be, but he just said it's all been arranged and it's going to be announced soon. But he did rule out Panmunjom a couple of days ago, and it seems to be the location has been set for Singapore now. What do you think of this development?
Yes, I think recently some countries like South Korea and the U.S. and North Korea is not talking about the trilateral cooperations anymore. For example, for the issues like the Korean War ending declarations and peace treaty issues, because at this inter-Korean summit meeting, North and South Korea's stipulated in the agreement that all these kind of peace treaty issues, 3 countries or 4 countries would cooperate each other. And it definitely meant that China was excluded from those 3 countries. But I think, recently these kinds of atmospheres changing. Seems like other countries are beginning to accept a more important participation of China as players on these matters. And I think that issue, was finalized when Kim Jong-un visited Dalian to meet Xi Jinping. So, okay, now 4 parties, 4 countries for the peace treaty. And why should you have it in Panmunjom? One of the significance that we wanted to have at Panmunjom is that, right after the summit meeting between North Korea and the United States, South Korean President Moon Jaein joining and 3 of those leaders can declare there that, okay, the Korean War is ended. But if those 3 countries would change to 4 countries, I don't think there's really significant meaning that we really have to hold the summit meeting at Panmunjom.
And I guess Kim Jong-un's trip to Dalian, China, by plane showed that he is willing to travel by plane if needed. But still, President Moon and Donald Trump had a conversation very recently. They must have talked about something. They must still be talking about how to align their interests. What do you think they would have talked about?
Well, I think it definitely about the denuclearizing issues. I mean, the issues when the North Korea and the U.S. president's leaders meet for the summit meeting. I'm not sure when it would be held, sometime early June or something. I think still there exist some differences. I mean, definitely Pompeo visited Pyongyang and then they have come up with some practical agreement in Pyongyang, but I think there still exist some differences. For example, for the regime guarantee, North Korea might request some of the issues like a nuclear umbrella of the United States and some of the strategic assets of the joint military exercise between the US and South Korea. All the kind of tricky issues. And also some other issues would be the sanctions soften. When would be the sanctions softening happen? I mean, the US position is very firm. But I think the sanction issue is a very keen issue for the North Korean side. So all these kind of residual issues still remain very keen and difference between those 2 countries. I think that's some kind of role the South Korean leader has to make. Maybe the mediator role would be more active when we have some meeting with, President Trump on 22nd. But I think all these kinds of role of South Korean leader is something that I think 2 leaders have talked about over phone call, I think.
His diplomatic skills will probably be very important in the coming months. As you said, mediating between the US and North Korea. On that note of diplomacy, before we go, it is the 1-year anniversary of Moon Jae-in's presidency. Now, he's got record high approval ratings, and especially his diplomatic skills have been praised by the public. What do you make of his term so far this year?
Yes, I also agree with you, because last year everything seemed very obscure. I mean, President Trump, President Moon Jae-in wanted to improve the inter-Korean relations. Last year it was all about sanctions, President Trump sanctioning North Korea. The 2 countries had a terrible relationship, some kinds of possibility of warfare in the Korean Peninsula. But, because of such a diplomatic efforts of President Moon Jae-in, I think this year things have changed abruptly and things are going very well, evolving very smoothly. Even, the President Trump is gearing towards South Korea rather than Japan. I mean, Prime Minister Abe Shinzo is visiting the U.S. so many times, but he's not getting much from President Trump. So I think, and also, China, Japan now seems like a residual countries. It seems like the Korean Peninsula is the center of Northeast Asia. So all these kinds of diplomatic outcome of, President Moon Jae-in, I think it's very fascinating. And one important thing is that he is not an ideologue. Many people in the States are worrying that maybe he's the same progressive, presidents as previous, like Roh Moo-hyun, Kim Dae-jung. Oh, I'm worrying about Moon Jae-in. But, when you look at him, when you look at his diplomatic style, he's very rational, strategic, and interest-based person. He is not an ideologue. He's trying to be balanced between inter-Korean relations and the U.S.-South Korea alliance. I think this kinds of balanced approach is making him a great success in diplomacy.
And how do you rate his performance at the Inter-Korean Summit when he met with Kim Jong-un? I mean, all this, all this situation with him,
You mean A, B, C, D, something like that?
with him dealing with North Korea, I mean, that was one of the issues that he very pushed during his candidacy as well.
Yeah.
I mean, things seems to be going all right for now. I mean, do you credit Moon Jae-in?
Yes.
Or is it more the fact that U.S., North Korea?
Yeah, I think many elements are mixed right now. I mean, President Trump's sanction might have worked, And Kim Jong-un might be a different leader from his father. He maybe have some change in his perceptions. Economic prosperity is more important than nuclear weapons to prop up his regime. And plus, Moon Jaein, President Moon Jaein's diplomatic, efforts. I think all these things are combined together and making this a great outcome. I mean, Korean Peninsula is not only the Korean Peninsula; it's something that's, fit between many, global leaders. So I think it's very delicate, and we are making progress, I think.
Well, thank you for your time today. That's all we have for. We hope to see you again soon.
Okay, thank you.
That's our show for now, but tune in to Arirang News throughout the day for all the latest news and updates. I've been Kwon Jang-ho, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.
Naengmyeon, cold buckwheat noodles, are a summer treat. The three major types are the Hamang Naengmyeon, buckwheat noodles topped with sliced fish, the Pyongyang Naengmyeon, buckwheat noodles in cold broth, and the Jinju Naengmyeon, which is eaten with seafood broth and topped with meat, cabbage kimchi, and eggs. Among these noodles, there is an interesting story behind the origin of Pyongyang Naengmyeon. Let's take a look. In the mid-Goryeo period, there was a man named Dalse who lived with his in-laws at a tavern at Cheomsaem-gor, Pyongyang. One day, he happened to hear a 100-year-old man saying that the secret to long life was buckwheat. So he began to sell buckwheat noodles. But the noodles were sold out so quickly that he often couldn't serve customers.